We're back, and it's time for Ask Annex. In the studio, Matt Morzy, investment team manager, also a CFP. Hey.
Hey, Danny.
And we got Fred Coleman, a CFP and a wealth manager. Hello.
Hello, Danny.
All right, first on Ask Annex, big question here. I am 60 years old and retired. I've got about $800,000 in traditional IRAs and about $700,000 in brokerage accounts. Should I start drawing on my IRAs now, or should I leave it to grow and draw from my after-tax brokerage accounts? I have a pension, so my marginal federal tax rate for the IRA withdrawal is 22%. Common sense thing seems to be leave the money in there as long as possible, but will I get hit with a tax bomb in 15 years when RMDs start?
Great question. You have a lot of moving parts, and this is an ideal situation for some distribution planning. The goal of creating a distribution plan is to withdraw funds as tax efficiently as possible. So we need to take a few things into consideration. The first thing is your pension. The thing that you didn't mention in here is that at some point, Social Security will come into play. So although that you're in a 22% tax bracket now, this is actually likely the lowest tax bracket that you'll be in. So what I would encourage you to do is to start looking at some Roth conversions. You have about 15 years of tax flexibility before you're forced to take required minimum distributions. If you do Roth conversions, that money can still grow, and you're getting taxes out the way at probably the lowest tax rate you'll ever be at. This will help create that tax-free bucket, and then you'll also still have that brokerage account there for flexibility and any supplemental withdrawals that you may need.
Yeah, that's good planning. Thanks, Fred. Next up, what is your opinion of fund of funds? Matt, I guess that's yours, and can you explain a fund of funds?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Danny. A fund of fund is essentially where you have like an allocation fund, such as like a target date fund, which is probably the most well-known one, where let's say you plan on retiring in 25 years, you have an allocation built within that fund of other funds that create that. So instead of like a bond fund or a stock fund, where the stock fund's going to have a whole bunch of different stocks in it, like Apple, Microsoft, Google, and all those kind of things, a fund of fund has other funds. So it might have a large cap fund, a small cap fund, an international fund, a bond fund, all of those pieces put together to make up that fund. So fund of funds. So probably the most common ones, like I said, are target date funds, where they're going to shift over time for you on your behalf. So if you have a retirement goal of 25 years, you pick one that lines up from a year perspective to that. They're very common in 401k plans. And then as you get closer, the manager of that fund is automatically making you more conservative on what they call a glide path over the course of time. So my opinion of them is, what is your goal? What are you trying to achieve? And is that going to be the best way for you? Like I said, in 401k, 403bs, even HSAs or 529s, these are very, very common, and they fill a great need in those areas. Generally, it's people who are not investment professionals but are saving in that way. They don't have access to advice to be able to create that allocation. And in order to make sure that they're not going to screw something up, they could use one of those. That's a great way to do that. Here at Annex, we generally don't use them. What we can do is actually create and help people with their 401k, 403b allocations so that they can have something that's more custom or specific to them. Because the drawback of a fund of funds is everyone who uses it is assumed to be the same. If we're all going to retire in 25 years, we're going to have the exact same allocation. What it doesn't take into account is if I'm more aggressive or more conservative than you guys are, even though we're going to retire at the same spot, or that's the idea, we might want a different allocation there. So there are some drawbacks to it too. But if you don't have access to that advice, or if maybe the other investment options are not great within the 401k, that might be a good way to go. For instance, my wife, the plan that she has, I really don't like the investment options that are inside of her 401k. So that's what we use as a fund of fund or a target date fund there, because to me, that's the best allocation that we can get there.
What's the farthest out target date fund that you've seen?
Oh, I think 2065 or 2070, I think is what I've seen.
Yeah, I'll be 105.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pick that one. All right, Fred, I think this one is for you. What do you think about the Frank Duke method of working through NUA? You got to explain NUA, and then who is Frank Duke? I know George Duke, the jazz great, but who's Frank Duke?
Yeah. Only thing I know is Duke basketball. Frank Duke, I don't know Frank Duke either, but he became popular or famous for using a method called net unrealized appreciation, and he actually took it a step further. So the way that net unrealized appreciation works is it works for those who have company stock within their 401k plan. So if you have company stock within your 401k plan, this question is specifically for you. And also those whose stock has greatly appreciated over time. You could be the owner, employee, or for someone who's been working there for many years, and for those who are in a higher tax bracket. So one example is, let's say you're in the 37% tax bracket. Using the NUA method, essentially you could only pay 20% capital gains tax on the company stock rather than paying 37% at the ordinary income level. Frank Duke, he took it to another level using the 60-day rollover rule to attempt to save even more on taxes. It's a lot of complexities when it comes to this, and it depends on your individual situation if this method would work for you or not, but it needs to be executed perfectly, and it involves your wealth manager, then also making sure they have a CPA on their team.
NUA is something that we do a lot of with our Annex executive and Annex private clients.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Fred Coleman, CFP Wealth Manager, thanks.
Thanks.
Matt Morzy, Investment Team Manager, thank you.
Thank you.